Welcome to this week's edition of The Scots in Us. And I'm delighted that we're going to be taking another wonderful tour with John Harbour of Exclusive Scottish Visits. He's going to take us on a visit to the Isle of Mull, to Tobermory and Iona Abbey. And so without further ado, good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning, Camilla. I'm very well indeed. From a rather misty and chilly Scotland. I've just come back from the Borders region, in fact, and it's looking a wee bit autumnish out there, I can tell you. But the video that we're about to see, I'm quite excited about, because people often ask me as a tour guide, having travelled Scotland for the last 10 years, is what's my favourite place? Well, the Isle of Mull is my favourite place. This is a snapshot. We take the ferry from Oban up to Tobermory, the capital of the island, and it's a lovely little town. And then from there, we zoom all the way back down to the other side of the island to a small village called Fionnphort. And Fionnphort is opposite the island of Iona. And Iona, of course, most important for St. Columba and the birthplace of Christianity, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. And we pop in and see the lovely Iona Abbey. So I'm quite excited that this week we're covering this particular aspect. So I just hope that all the lovely followers of the American Scottish Foundation enjoy this little visit.
Well, I'm looking forward to it because I used to go there as a child, and I remember the ferry going sideways because of the tides and everything that was up there. So absolutely. I'm looking forward to returning. So over to you, John, and thank you for all you do to help.
Absolute pleasure. My absolute delight. So hope you all enjoy this short film on a visit to the island of Mull, to Tobermory, down to Fionnphort and on to the island of Iona. Thank you.
Hello, this is John Harbour from Exclusive Scottish Visits in partnership with American Scottish Foundation. And welcome to our short visit to the island of Mull. Mull is the fourth largest island in Scotland. It's about 900 square miles. And has a population of about 3,000. And to give you some comparison, the Isle of Skye, which is about the same size, has a population of about 10,000, so less people, less crowded. Mull is a place I love to visit, and I'm delighted to have you with me on this journey from Tobermory, right at the top of the island, all the way down to Fionnphort and onto the island of Iona. So come and join me, but before we do that, let's go and have a look at a map and show you exactly where we're going. So here we have the map of Scotland with Edinburgh to the east, Glasgow to the west, all the way up past Loch Lomond, Inverary, up to the port of Oban. And opposite Oban is the island of Mull. So we take off from Oban and come all the way across to Craignure, the main port of the Isle of Mull. And then from Craignure, we're going to go all the way up to Tobermory, after which we're going to come all the way back down again, all the way down to Fionnphort, and then get on a ferry over to the Isle of Iona, where we'll see Iona Abbey. A wonderful trip, and one I'm looking forward to. So let's get cracking. Leaving the port of Oban on the mainland, heading over to Craignure, the main port on the island of Mull. Sorry about the background noise. There will be wind, there'll be the engines from the ferry, there'll also be car alarms going off on the car deck, but that's the experience that you're going to have with me as we cross over. Let's start our adventure. Yep, no bother. Yeah. Okay. we made it. And this is the port of Oban. Oban means the bay, and in fact the town of Oban sits right in a sheltered bay protected by Craignure Island, that we'll see shortly. And right up on the hill, overlooking Oban, is McCaig's monument, or McCaig's tower. This is a bit of a folly, built by a Mr. McCaig who was a banker in the early 1900s as a monument to his family. It was never completed by the family after he died. The money was not used to complete the inside, but it's quite a monument, and in fact you can go right up there and have a wonderful view right over the bay of Oban. And just as we leave Oban, on the right hand side we've got Dunolly Tower. And Dunolly Tower is a 13th century tower built by the famous MacDougall clan. To the left, as we leave, Craignure Island. Craignure Island. And just up on the point there, you have a monument to Hutchison. It's called the Hutchison's Monument. And he was the one that effectively established the ferry system out of Oban to the Western Isles. And this is the Island of Mull. We're just heading into Craignure shortly. Before we do that, right on the headland there is a wonderful castle called Duart Castle. And Duart Castle is a 13th century castle built by the MacDougall clan. In the 14th century, Lachlan MacLean, the 5th clan chief of Clan MacLean, married Mary MacDonald, the daughter of the clan chief of Clan MacDonald, a very powerful clan who had these lands at the time, and the castle was actually given over as a dowry. In the 17th century, it was the Campbells, the Duke of Argyll, the Campbells, that took the island, and they still own most of the land today. But this castle, Duart Castle, remains the seat of Clan MacLean. Well, welcome to Craignure. Just arrived on the island of Mull at Craignure, where the ferry has now docked, and we've now come to a turning, and we've got to go either to Tobermory or to Fionnphort. Well, to start the journey, we are going to go off to Tobermory. So let's head off to Tobermory. So the thing about Mull is the single-track roads nearly all over the island. And as you can see, there's only enough space for one vehicle. Coming up the left-hand side, there's a lay-by. You've got to pull over there when somebody's coming towards you. Simple as that. Lovely place to drive, though. Just on the way up to Tobermory, we've stopped a lovely spot to see the shipwrecks. Old ships dating over 100 years ago. And the water beyond is the Sound of Mull, and that land across the other side is the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, the mainland of Scotland. And I've just pulled over again to give you a view of the Sound of Mull and the opposite bank, the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. But we also get a great view of the ferry that's heading off to the island of Barra. The ferry is just heading out through the Sound, all the way to the west, and then up to the Outer Hebrides to the island of Barra. Now back on the road. So here we are, just coming into Tobermory, just past the sign for the Tobermory distillery, and shortly we're going to drop down into the village itself. And we're just going to go straight through the village. You start to get a feel for the size of the village itself. Not a large town. What's up? Tobermory would originally have been a fishing port, and off to the right you can see the harbour, which we'll get a better view of shortly, but I can see in the corner there's already a bunch of creels down the pier here, the fishing pier. We'll see that a bit better later on. But as we come round, you're getting a feel now for what Tobermory is famous for, and that's the painted houses along the main road. Well, welcome to Tobermory. Tobermory is a small village right at the north end of the island of Mull. There's probably been a settlement here since about the 6th century. Certainly some of the excavations they've done have shown that to be the case. But this village we're actually in at the moment, or small town of about 1,000 people, was established in 1788 as a fishing village, and the engineer was Thomas Telford, very famous road builder, very famous bridge builder, and also town builder. And in fact the pier here itself was built by Thomas Telford. You can see the painted houses behind me, and this is what Tobermory is quite famous for. In fact, there's a famous television series called Ballymorey, which uses these houses in this village as the setting for that particular TV programme. So Tobermory has become quite famous on television. And just as I spin round and let you see the town itself, I'm going to tell you another story of why it's still quite famous today. And that is that somewhere in Tobermory Bay, out there, lying between the mainland here and the outer islands there, it is believed there's a Spanish galleon sunk with gold treasure. Now in 1588, the Spanish Armada was defeated by the English ships in the Channel. After the battle was over between the Spanish Armada and the British ships, a few escaped and came north rather than try and get back down the Channel, where they would be met by English men of war. One of those Spanish galleons actually came into Tobermory Bay seeking help and shelter and anchored just off the shore here. Unfortunately, it was set alight and sunk at its moorings. Now it's believed that the galleon itself was full of gold. And for the last 500 years, men have been diving around this whole area to find if there is gold. Well, it's never been found. So if there's something you'd like to do, then come up and try and find the gold for yourself. So we're right in the centre of Tobermory now, and fascinating to see these lovely palm trees. Actually, they're not uncommon on the west coast of Scotland because the Gulf Stream runs all the way up the west coast. And just to show you some of the facilities that are here, coming around from the centre of the town, lovely bar, Moroccans in here for a beer. And as we walk forward, established in 1708, is the Tobermory distillery. Just looking up the distillery now. Nice little dram, the Tobermory. And then round back to the harbour itself. So a nice compact little town, and it's well worth a visit. Well, that gives you a quick look at Tobermory, the capital of the island of Mull. We're now going to head south about 25 miles down to Fionnphort, where we'll also cross over to the island of Iona. So we won't be stopping this time, so let's go and see what Fionnphort has to offer. And we've just arrived in Fionnphort. There's the ferry shop, and this is all the way down to the ferry port here. And before we go down to the ferry, I just wanted to show you the lovely view of the island of Iona, which is where we'll be going shortly. There's the island there. Just see the abbey in the distance. There's wonderful views here. Beautiful white sandy shore of Fionnphort itself. And we've just arrived down at the ferry terminal. Down the ramp here, and you can see the Calmac ferry, the Iona ferry, just coming in now. We'll be boarding this ferry and heading off to the island of Iona. You can just see in the distance, and we will head off to see the Iona Abbey as well, the lovely abbey. There's just one car on the ferry today because the only cars allowed onto the ferry are those that belong to the island. Well, here we are, how exciting, coming down the ramp towards the Iona ferry. As you can see, a relatively small ferry would only take about 10-12 cars. We're going to step on board and head off to the island of Iona. Hello, how are you doing?
Ticket, sir?
Have you? So we're just crossing the Sound of Iona at this moment, and as we do, spin round and let you see Iona close up. You can see where we're actually going to be berthing very shortly at the small port in Iona. And there's the island of Iona just before us, and over in the corner, just below that hill, is the extraordinary Iona Abbey, which we'll be going to see shortly. And as we approach the port, there's the bow just going down right now. Amazing bit of engineering, and all he'll do, he'll actually beach onto the ramp just ahead of us, and we'll all go ashore from here. And just coming into view now is the Abbey up on the hill. The front end of the ferry is just about to touch the ramp. There we go. You can hear the crunch, and the ramp itself will start coming down, and we'll get onto the island of Iona. Beautiful white sandy beaches here as well. Well, welcome to the island of Iona, and I know we're here to see the Abbey in particular, but I'd also like to see the beauty of the island itself with fabulous white sandy beaches. We've just come across the Sound of Iona, and as you pan round, you're going to get a view of the small harbour here and then the ferry itself. So if I just pan you round, and you can actually see the Sound. There's a boat going off to Staffa there. As you continue on round, you can see the ferry from which we've just come. Now let's go and see the Abbey. And as we make our way up from the ferry, we're heading up a track that's probably been trailed by thousands of pilgrims over the years to come and see the relics of St Columba. And the first thing we come to is a nunnery. A beautiful old nunnery dating from the 1200s. We continue on the track up towards the Abbey itself. And as we leave the nunnery, continuing on the track, and lo and behold, ahead of us is the amazing Iona Abbey. And as we come up to the road leading up to the Abbey, we have on our left-hand side the MacLean Cross. There would have been a number of these crosses on the route up to the Abbey, once again marking the route up to the relics of St Columba, the MacLean Cross. And many pilgrims would have stopped here on the route to the Abbey. That cross was erected in the 1500s by the powerful MacLean clan, who still dominate this particular area. So we have the Abbey just coming into view now. And before I point it out, I just want to point out this magnificent building here, St Oran's Chapel, the oldest building on the island of Iona. This building was built by the powerful MacDonald lords in the 1100s and stands testament to them today. And quite a few clan chiefs of that era were buried within that chapel. Around about you have one of the most ancient graveyards on the island of Iona. Well, welcome to Iona Abbey, a very special place. You almost get a feeling of a sense of something. I don't know what it is, but I've been coming here for the last 40 years and I just feel so relaxed, reposed, and I suppose it's almost spiritual. The Abbey itself is a reconstruction of the Benedictine Abbey that was built here in the 1200s. Many of the 1200 structures are still in place, and you can see those within the Abbey itself. But it's famous because St. Columba came here in 563. St. Columba came over from Ireland and established a monastery here. And actually, if you were to walk around the grounds, you can actually still see parts of the rampart of the enclosure of the original monastery that was here. And St. Columba was very famous because he established Christianity in Scotland. He was the one that had 12 priests that came with him, almost like 12 disciples, and they went forth into the Pictish country, the pagan country, to spread Christianity. This abbey holds so many remnants of the past, and even at my feet, if I can just spin down a little bit and let you see the path that's just here, leading all the way into the chapel. And that is the Street of the Dead. And when somebody had died and was brought here for consecration, then the coffin would have been carried on the street all the way to the ancient graveyard. And just before we enter the Abbey Church, I just want to point out one of the crosses, and there are many around here, but this is original. This has been in place for about 1200 years. And the amazing thing is that in those days, your average person could not read or write, and therefore depended upon symbolism. And the symbolism on this cross is just quite amazing. For example, right at the top are lions which symbolise Christ's majesty. And underneath that, within the circle, you've got the Virgin and Child surrounded by angels. And then there's Daniel in the lion's den. And then Abraham preparing to sacrifice Isaac. And then King David playing the harp. All of this symbolism telling the people who come to visit here that this is part of the Bible story and to trust in Christianity. And now we're looking at St. John's Cross. And this is important because St. John's Cross, although a replica, and the original we'll see in the museum shortly, is right in front of the shrine of St. Columba. And this is where his body and relics lay for many years. After Columba's death in 597, a small wooden shrine was built for him. This stone edifice was built later. But let's let you see where the body of St. Columba was buried, inside the shrine. We're now going to step inside the Abbey Church and let you see it in all its glory. And from the Abbey, we'll go through to the Cloisters. And this is where the monks would walk on a daily basis all the way around this quadrant, contemplating, reading their books, and spending some time. And right in the centre of this quadrant would have been a herb garden, because they were the medicine men of the day. The dove of peace. And within the cloister, we find these grave markers, which were brought in from the ancient burial ground to preserve them from the wind and the weather. And within the cloister, you would also have found some recesses in the wall, for example, this one here. And this is where the monks would have kept their books, their Bibles, and sit here contemplating about life in silence. So as we now depart the cloister and head back out into the Abbey grounds, we can see it's quite a sizable building. And beautiful scenery all the way across the Sound of Iona and round the back of the Abbey now as we come down towards the museum. And confronting us immediately is this wonderful cross, St. John's Cross, the original, the one that stands right in front of the shrine of St. Columba. Fragments were found and it's beautifully been restored and put back together here. And the wonderful thing about the museum is it follows a timeline, 563, when Columba arrived on Iona. 690s, Abbot Adomnan writes a biography of St. Columba, celebrating many of his miracles. 750, the monks experiment with the creation of the very first high cross sculptures. And Iona crosses were renowned throughout Scotland. 753, Columba's relics taken to Ireland to help enact new laws. 795, Viking raiders launch the first of a series of surprise attacks on the Abbey, killing all the monks. 800, the glorious Book of Kells is produced on Iona, soon moved to Ireland for safekeeping. In fact, you can go and visit the original Book of Kells in Trinity College in Dublin. And in 807, fleeing the Vikings, some monks leave for new headquarters in Ireland. However, the Abbey does continue to thrive. So a wonderful museum with many artefacts, and certainly worth a visit when you're coming to Iona.
On leaving the Abbey Museum, we head back to the ferry, and from the jetty we can just see the Abbey beyond the village and across the glorious sandy bay. It's time to get back onto the ferry and depart the wonderful island of Iona.
Well, as we leave the wonderful Iona Abbey, that is the end of the short tour of the Isle of Mull, all the way from Tobermory, the capital, down to Fionnphort and onto the island of Iona. If this short tour has whetted your appetite to visit Scotland, then perhaps you may listen to one of my podcasts on Scotland called Unique Scotland, and you can find that on most of the podcast platforms. It just leaves me to say, on behalf of the American Scottish Foundation and myself, thank you for watching us today, and in traditional fashion, Slàinte mhath.